There's so much to silence. That's why meditation is so important. Prayer, because it takes us to that place of between thought. And if we could listen in that place between thought, we would hear so much more. It allows for messages and awarenesses to drop in instead of starting directly from our own intellect. Yes, silence is very important. And it can be used as a weapon, but it also can be used as a gift.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Truth That Heals podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Anthony Hernandez, and today's episode is an interview with Dr. Heather Browne. Now, Dr. Heather Browne is a TEDx speaker, and she has her book, Speaking with the Heart, Transforming Your Relationship and Communication with Compassion and Connection. So I'll be leaving a link in the show notes where you can check out her book and get a copy for yourself. And also want to reach out if you have been following this podcast, The Truth That Heals, and you've been seeing my journey from beginning the podcast to where I am today. Hopefully you've seen the growth and all of the work that I put in to making this podcast a reality. But if you would also like to contribute in helping me to keep this podcast going, go ahead and give a like, subscribe, share, comment, or if you're listening to this on a podcast platform, go ahead and give a rating. Hopefully it's a good rating. It's up to you. And if you would like to help in other ways, you can go to my link, buymeacoffee.com/truththath7. So this podcast can keep going. And anyways, I really want to thank everybody who has helped this podcast become a reality. And I want to give a special thank you to our guest today, Dr. Heather Browne. Again, before we even go to the episode, just letting you know, I'll be leaving in the show notes the link so where you can check out more of the work by Dr. Heather Browne and go ahead and get a copy of her book. The title again is Speaking with the Heart, Transforming Your Relationship and Communication with Compassion and Connection. So without any more further ado, here is the interview with Dr. Heather Browne. Dr. Heather Browne, how are you doing today?
Ryan, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here with your guests.
And it is an honor to have you here, and all the work that you do, also the work that you do on social media. You're very active, spreading your truth, spreading your doing your work, and I'm excited for this interview.
I am too.
So one of my first things that I like to do before getting into your work is getting to know the guests better. So to begin this interview, I would like to ask you, when was it that you knew that you wanted to be a doctor, and what inspired you to help people?
Well, it took me a while to find out I was going to be a therapist. I was always very interested in people and relationship and communication. My mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. And so when you live with somebody who has that kind of situation or condition, the way you relate is very, very different. And from that, I found that people were drawn to me. I went into theater, wanting to write a different story for myself than the story that I had had. And what I found in that process and the working that I was doing in group homes and in different places, that I really actually wanted to help people share their own story instead of maybe go on stage and be somebody I wasn't. So it would have been when I was out of college. I'd gotten my degree in theater, and I was auditioning quite a bit for theater, doing some modeling, but working at a group home. And I fell in love with trying to give these young girls somewhat of a normal teenage years, because I hadn't had that. And the more I did it and the more I got into therapy of my own, because I knew I needed to have that after my childhood, the deeper and deeper the healing went. And then eventually one day God just slammed me in the side of my head and he said, and instead of pretending to be someone you're not. Why don't you help people be who they are to be? And I just thought, that's it. So I reached out to a couple of schools and I was on my own after high school. So I'd put myself through college. I didn't want to go into debt for the master's. So I reached out to several schools and to see if there was any way to get a scholarship so I could be a therapist. The organization I worked with was willing to support that halfway. And so I found a school that would do the other. And so between the two of them working together, I was able to get my master's and then continue on for my doctorate as well. The doctorate came kind of as an afternote. I was uh, at my graduation, my dad came and celebrated me getting my master's. And then he said, no one in our family has reached this level. What would you say if I offered to pay for your doctorate? And I said, I'll take it. So then I went and got my doctorate, which was just, whipped cream and cherries and nuts on top of the work that I had done, but it was really powerful and very beautiful. So that's been now 28 years ago. Yeah, 28 years ago. 30 years ago. Long time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And during this process of you getting your doctorate and then you helping individuals and couples, did you ever experience a bit of like imposter syndrome where you might have felt like, what the hell am I doing? Like how is it that I'm helping people? Did you ever experience anything like that?
Well, I remember my first four clients in particular, especially the first. And when you get licensed in California, you have to do 3,000 therapy hours. So you've worked a lot under supervision. But once you move into on your own, it just feels different. And so I remember that first session thinking, please don't ask how many people I've had. And then once I got beyond four, it felt a little bit different. But I will still at times find if someone comes in who is powerful or strong, or, I might get a little like, ooh, I'm a little nervous here. Um, I think most of us probably go through a place of imposter syndrome as we move into who we're becoming, simply from the nature of we're moving into who we're going to becoming. And you think about where you want to be. So because of that, it creates a little distortion between this is where I am now and this is where I am going. When you realize that, I think you can release that belief and just say, well, I'm just starting off. So of course there's lots for me to learn. I know what I know, and I'm going to know a lot more later on. But I think with the imposter syndrome piece, I think it comes from trying to share where you're not yet. Like I have to sell you beyond where I am, and I have to make you believe I'm that. Instead of really embracing, this is where I am. This is where I'm skilled. This is what I know. And I will grow beyond this and become more efficient, more skilled, more trained in time. I think I wrote a piece called Ripping the Glasses Off Imposter Syndrome. It's on Brains Magazine because I think it shortcuts our personal empowerment. Like we're basically telling ourselves you're not very good at being a fake you. How silly. Instead of just saying, this is who I am. This is who I am. And my insecurities are part of that. And that's okay. And I'm going to learn how to take care of myself beyond this so I can grow beyond this.
And you have grown so much because I've been seeing you on social media on the links, and there are a bunch of articles that you've written. There's also you're active on social media. You have written your book, and I wanted to ask you, how do you juggle your time management and dealing with couples and to be producing so much material? How do you find time?
It is an ongoing thing, isn't it? And there's times where I have to say to myself, like, Heather, pull back a little bit. You need to take some time just for you. You need to go to the gym. You want to see some
Mhm.
friends. Um, Part of it is I've moved away from the piece of trying to create social media that looks perfect, and I simply just record. And as long as what I'm sharing I feel is pertinent, then I'll do it. When I first started, people were saying your hair has to be perfect, your makeup has to be perfect, the backdrop has to be perfect. And I found that it would take me all day long to record one YouTube. And I thought, I can't do this. I just don't have the time for this. And I don't have the funds to hire someone professionally to do all of this. And so more so just share what it is that I know. And it tends to flow pretty smoothly most times. But you have to get help. I've had VAs, I've had an assistant, I have a gardener. You have to get support because you can't do everything on your own. I'm a widow, and so that opens up the pocket that there isn't a partner that I'm spending time with, and my kids are both grown and out of the house now. So there is more time than years and years ago before I wrote the book when I was, wife and active mom. So it shifts. But for the ones who are in your 30s and you're married and you're having little ones, it's tough. It's tough. So give yourself space and recognize there's a lot of priorities that are important for you to handle. And you don't want to miss out on what's really precious with raising your kids and with your partner.
No, my next question may be a little bit personal, so you can totally skip it if you like. But you mentioned earlier about your mother being a paranoid schizophrenic, also that you are a widow. And my question for you is, with all of your family experience, being it from parenting to your spouse to romance, throughout your life, how has it? How has your life experience, how has that experience uh, influenced your speaking with the heart book, and has it influenced it in any way for you to write this book, your personal relationships?
I don't even know how to answer that because I am myself now because of all that I have gone through. So every part of my journey is part of my story. And my book, my career was completely impacted by my mom, by living with someone who did not relate to the same reality that I did and trying to find ways to bridge that so that we could connect somewhere, which was a lot of my childhood. My TEDx is largely on that, like trying to bridge with compassion that connection so you can connect with someone where they are, not necessarily where you are. And that I find is the challenge that we have, or at least my feeling of the challenge that we have in our modern day world. We're no longer interested in finding out where the other person is. We just want to demand people to be where we are. And so from that, we miss out on their whole ancestral, their own life story because we're trying to look at them through the lens of if I were you, this is how I would be, which is makes no sense because we
Mhm.
haven't lived their life. So all of what I have been through is part of that. And in the book, one thing that I chose to do, which I think gives it an interesting layer, is not writing it just as the therapist, but also writing it as a widow. And so I'll say to people, like, go off and look into each other's eyes and give each other a hug and know that I want one too. So it gives it a little different ting, which I think can help. It's very easy when you're in a relationship and you're struggling to think, I'm just done. I'll just go find somebody else. Like this isn't working. And when you've lost somebody on your own, it's a very different experience. So my mom, being on my own at 18, being a widow, being a mom, it's all part of all. And definitely in the book, because I've utilized what happened in my marriage. I utilized what I saw in my mom and dad's marriage. I've utilized what's happened in so many of my clients' marriages and being a parent to come up with exercises and techniques and things that I've tested out, but also had clients test out as well.
And how did you come up with the title Speaking with the Heart?
Well, I knew it was a communication book, and I knew it was on couples communication. And it just popped in. And most people said speaking from the heart. And I'm like, yeah, no, it's with. Because when you speak with, you're bringing that quality out and through. When it's when it's from, it starts just in that spot. And my thought is, well, when you really tap into love, love is beyond the individual. So if you're speaking with the heart, you're allowing yourself to open up to the divine and what is above and beyond Heather. And to me, when we do that, that's when we do our most beautiful work, when we open up to what is divine, what is of light, what is of beauty, what is of God, what is of source. That is the place where we really get illuminated in this life. And I think that is the way that we then can offer so much more than what we are, which also then goes for a flip of the imposter. If I can open myself up to as much as I can, the knowledge of what there is beyond me, then I'm so much more than who I am, not less. And that's a beautiful gift to embrace that for yourself.
Something comes to mind is because you mentioned that there's a difference with speaking with the heart and speaking from the heart. One that comes to mind is speak your mind.
Mm.
What would you say is the difference or maybe similarities of speak your mind and speaking with the heart?
Um, they could be the same. When I think of speak your mind, my thought is this is something that I want to tell you, and this is my truth. When it's shared as speaking with the heart, it is this is something that I believe and this is my truth, and I'm hoping it will bless you. A lot of people will say, I had to say this because I just had to be honest. And I think oftentimes that's a cop out to make a little dig. So one of the questions that I always ask people before they step into a conversation is what you're bringing up going to bless the relationship or the individual? Because if not, you're not presenting it in the best way. You can share anything that you feel and believe with love if you choose to. And when you do, then there's a different way of delivering it. If I speak my mind, I'm just going to tell you what I think. And then it's going to be up to you to determine how you feel about that. When I'm speaking with my heart, my hope is to reach you, to touch you. I might not, but I'm also moving away from just the purely executive part of the brain and the analytical part where I'm going to tell you my truth, I'm going to tell you my fact. When I move into speaking with the heart, that's going to be part of it, but I'm also going to share with you how I feel. And I'm going to be compassionate about how that impacts you. And if there's challenges or struggles, instead of just saying, oh, well, you have to deal with it, that's your trigger, that's your issue, I'm going to say, oh my goodness, I'm so sorry. What could I do to help right now? What could I do to try and benefit you right now? Or how can I show you that that my intention was not to cause a disruption there? I see that it has. So what is it that I can do to help you with that right now so that doesn't feel so strong? There's the quality of with, which is very different. Partnership, togetherness, connection versus I'm going to speak my mind, which is
Mhm.
just me. So to me, any conversation you have that is a with, that's a we, has a different energy.
So, what grace or what benefits would you say? Uh, what benefits would you say come into a person's life when they have not practiced speaking with the heart? How does it change in their life when they start tapping into that? And either for an individual or for couples, and they allow themselves or they learn how to start speaking with the heart. How does it change lives?
There's definitely a softening. Now, the other person might not always receive it the way that you wish that they would. When they do, it's lovely. But if not, it still then can slow you down into a place of pacing to find out what is going on and then to try to work with the other individual. But for my couples, when I can share with them how to speak with the heart and to move into communication in that way, then they talk about, well, where do we want to go with this? And what is the outcome that we want to have? And what's important for you in this? And what are you fearful of or worried about or concerned about? Where do you run away? Where do you push back? How can we help each other limit that or lessen that so that together we can come through to the other side? So what'll happen is a lot less screaming. Um, Arguments can be reduced to discussions. You learn how to pace. Certainly, compassion grows tremendously. Normally, opening and sharing and intimacy will come as well. Because if I'm going to share with you, hey, this is scary for me because as a kid, my mom used to do this. And so now I tend to like block out when someone starts to talk about this issue. I need you to know that. Oh my gosh, thank you for letting me know. What could I do right now? How can we help you feel safer right now? So it can change it drastically. And one of the things I always tell couples is one of the best exercises you can have is near the end of the day to say, is there someplace I haven't come through for you today? Is there someplace I missed you? Is there something you haven't shared with me that's probably important for us to explore? And what could we do to do that now? And then walk through that and clean that up. And then on the flip, to say, where have I touched you today the most? Or where have you felt the most loved or the most appreciated or the most wanted or desired? To find out, where are we connecting? We don't always know where we're connecting with the other. So it's important to find out. And then we also are not aware of what we don't remember or what we've missed, or where the person we're speaking with might have wanted something from us. So when you can clarify that, that helps tremendously as well.
And earlier you mentioned that it's not just speaking from, but it's speaking with the heart. And my question is, how do you help people communicate with their heart in the first place if they haven't even allowed themselves to go there? Like, are there any maybe tips or advice that you can share with the audience that can help us reach that communication with our hearts?
Yeah, think back to some times in your life where you have felt really loved, embraced, safe, cared for. What was that experience? And how was that person with you that you felt that way? And then how did that impact you? A lot of reconnecting goes back into your childhood. As a little kid, what were the things that you really loved, and who did you feel safe with, and who did you want to be? And when you tap back into that, that then guides back to, the essence of our spirit when we came into this world. And most often also our path and our choice in life, and what we're going to do. So to me, it would be looking at those moments where you did feel safe, loved, cared for. People will say, I never have, sometimes. And if you sit with them long enough, I personally have not found anybody yet where there wasn't someone, but it might be an aunt, a grandmother, a teacher, a babysitter, a neighbor, might be God, might be nature, might be the ocean, but we tend well, if you look at it on a spectrum, where do you feel the most connected to the least? There's going to be some place where you have felt the most connected. And so helping that individual find out what that might be or who that might be or where that might be can then help with that.
Thank you. And my next question is, because we're talking about communication with oneself, with the heart, how can people start listening with the heart?
It's a great question. To take time, and take in what the other one says and see where that then goes for you instead of having an answer to it immediately. To ask more questions. How does that impact you? Share with me why that's so important to you. I'm not quite sure I get that. So could you say it a little bit, give me a little bit more detail? Um, when you think about listening, what it really is hearing the other. And so the focus then becomes the other. And so asking more questions or spending more time or simply just giving yourself that opportunity to sit in the moment until it moves within you to find what it might be instead of this is just the way that I feel. Most of us have a very hard time listening because, myself included, we like to talk and we like to share our story. And listening really is caring more about the other person's experience, or at least equally to yours.
And so you've
And
been doing.
you can ask the other person, where do you feel I have heard you? Where do you feel that I aligned with what you're saying? Where do you not? And if you are aware that you're starting to drift or your own thought processes coming in, to own it, say, could you say that again? I'm so sorry. I was getting cloudy in my head. Or I'm sorry, I popped out for a second and started to think about making meatloaf. Could you share that again? Because it's really important. I want to really try to hear what you're saying. Repeating it back can help too. So what I heard you say, active listening, what I heard you say was you were scared when I walked in the room, when I came in so powerfully. Can you share with me like what you thought might happen? Or have you known that fear before? Did it remind you of another time? There's a really beautiful place. There's so many beautiful places in relationship, but there's a beautiful place in relationship where we can help an individual heal themselves to a different reality from what they have had if we're really compassionate and if we're respectful. It's never up to an individual to heal another um, emotionally. That really has to happen. You can hold space, you can support in that, but the other person has to walk through that process within their own heart and their own mind. But there's a place where, if my experience has always been that if I say the word shoe, I'm slapped. If I tell you that, and I'm really, really scared to say the word shoe, and you tell me that and guarantee me that you're not going to hit me, if I say it enough times and you don't, I will then have a new reality, which is with you, I can say shoe and not be hit. So I'm not always hit when I say shoe. And hopefully I'm never hit by you. So though maybe everyone before in my life did this, now there's a moment where it's not. And then that also draws us into the truth of the only moment we have is right now in this moment. So this moment, if we're open to it, ready for it, willing to it, and in a safe enough place, can be a healing moment. We can decide what has been before once we're an adult. We can decide what has been before can be different for us going forward by the nature of how we can take care of ourselves now. As a little one, you didn't have that. You didn't have that privilege.
And I like how you brought upon the fact of starting a new reality when they feel safe. And but going back, there's that time where perhaps a person may feel afraid or maybe are traumatized. Um, what advice do you have for someone who may feel alone and may feel like I have no one to go to?
Well, there is always support. And it's hard to reach out when you're in that place. But it's important to know there always is. There's 8 billion people on this planet. And there's therapists, there's pastors, there's rabbis, there's teachers, there's policemen. I mean, there's neighbors, there's friends, there's family, there's crisis lines, there's mental health services, there's doctors. So there's lots and lots of people to reach out to. I think you need to be mindful of who you are reaching out to. But, eons ago, I used to work on a suicide hotline, and they were calling us simply because they needed someone to pick up to be with them when they were in that state. So that's pretty connected in a very disconnected moment. Um, and uh, I'm going to say national because I can't speak for international, but I know there are in other countries too, but in the US, there's national hotlines, tons of them, to help with that so that no one ever has to be completely alone. And then there's also the place of if you have felt that way, which I think we all have at some point, I wonder if everybody else has felt that way at some point. And what would I have wanted? And would I have, if this was someone that I knew, would I want them to reach out to me? I remember after my mom killed herself, I remember a friend of mine, obviously I was going through a dark, heavy time. And one of my best friends was listening to my emotional darkness and fearful that I might be suicidal. And I wasn't. I wasn't ever going to kill myself because I'd lived through my mom doing that. I thought, I am not doing that to somebody else. And I remember talking to her about that. And I said, the reason I'm sharing is because I'm sharing. When I stop sharing, that's when it's problematic. There's a truth about depression. When the person's really mad, when the person's really sad, there's still there's still space, there's still time because they're processing, they're experiencing, and they're sharing their information. When the person goes numb and they don't care at all, that's when it becomes really precarious.
This really
And
brings to mind.
you see that in relationship too, when the person just kind of like, we can be done. It, that's when you're like, oh, I'll tell people if they come in and there's screaming going on and there's fighting going on and there's crying going on. I'm like, I know this feels really bad, but it's actually a better sign than if you're not feeling anything. So let me help you figure out how do you deal with this emotionality. Uh, but this is a better place than if you're feeling nothing or you just don't care. Apathy is a very dangerous place.
No, I wanted to get your take on the lockdowns, and I know there's a whole science behind that. I'm not going to get into the whole COVID and all that too much, but when it comes to the lockdowns and relationships, and because we're talking about communication, speaking with the heart, uh, this was a dark time in our country and around the world, and I also lost a loved one. It's very close to my heart this period. But did you see, as a professional, perhaps an increase in people coming to you for help in communication? And what were the effects that you have seen as a result of the lockdowns and people being so separated?
I don't know that it will ever not be part of us because it was such a powerful, strange encounter. Yes, there were so many challenges. Alcoholism went through the roof. Domestic violence really went up. Um, People were finding out secrets that you wouldn't normally find out, like drug addiction, affairs, challenges, lies, and deceit. So there was a lot of that was going on. Um, people people weren't able to do what they normally do socially. And so that created quite a challenge for a lot of people. Now, for some, it was ideal because it's just you and me, and we're together, and we're going to just do everything at home and fix up the backyard, and it's going to be great. But for a lot of people, they lost kinship and physical kinship with friends and family. And so then your roommates or whoever you lived with, or if you were alone, that was it. And for a lot of people, their jobs also went remote. So you weren't going anywhere. And so for a lot of people, it was really hard to go from having been active in the world, doing things, traveling, parties, funerals, weddings, like all these things didn't happen, or they happened with, you know, a Zoom or nobody present. And so we missed out on so much of each other's lives. And with that, I think a lot of people shut down. And I think social media went through the roof because you're watching other people and you're watching what other people are doing. And we got very, I think, in a lot of ways, overly obsessed with ourselves, but then also disconnected from others. And that uh, was a mucky situation.
Uh,
You still see the repercussions of it. If you go out, I mean, I know everyone's on their cell phones all the time, but if you go out and look at people in a restaurant, almost everyone's on their cell phones. You know, I'll travel and everyone's taking selfies, but they're not looking at the sunset. And for teens, it was drastic because they lost sports, theater, music, uh, dance. I mean, they lost so much of their personal expression. I also remember thinking, gosh, for someone whose biggest asset isn't either their intellect or possibly their face, moving into a Zoom world. Like, let's just say my biggest talent was being a dancer and I'm in high school. And that's where I get my kudos. That's my love. That's where I connect with people. That's where I feel my freest. And now I'm on a Zoom call and you get my face. So it cut us off from so much of who we are and cut us off so much from who others are. And if you were someone who was really smart, there was, you know, probably not as drastic. Somebody who's physically attractive, a little easier. But for someone who struggles with communication, and now you're on a Zoom, or someone who's very, very shy, it's really hard because it was it's odd. It's too direct, but yet it's totally indirect. Like right now, I'm looking at a green dot to look at your eyes,
mhm.
but I'm looking at a green dot and I'm trying to look at it like I'm looking into your eyes. But I am looking at a green dot. And that feels in some ways disarming, but also disconnected at the same time. So we've created this really strange way of engaging.
Something that you said that I really caught on to, really caught my attention was about, everyone outside taking selfies and everyone is on their phones and everyone is doing it. But they're not in the moment. And you mentioned they're not looking at the sunset or the sunrise. When was your last time? Do you remember the last time you looked at a sunset or a sunrise?
Yeah, sunset last night,
Isn't it beautiful?
not sunrise this morning. I slept through it, but
But
sunrise last night.
it's
I
beautiful,
love
isn't it?
sunsets. I love sunsets. I don't see with the time change, I don't see as many sunrises, but there's times of the year that I get up earlier to experience it too. But yeah, I love sunsets. And in Southern California, there's so many beautiful places to see them. And where I live this time of year, the sky's really lovely and pink and lavender, most sunsets. So even though I'm like not right by the beach where I see this big, huge, beautiful scene, I can see the colors and I love that. Yeah.
And I bring that. That's something that really resonated with me because, oh man, I love sunrises, sunsets. I don't get to always see it because I'm working or maybe I'm sound asleep, nice, tucked in my bed. But many times I fall into that same mentality of social media, connecting with everyone else, and I'll get my phone and I'll take pictures of the many colors that are being, in the sky, because it's red, orange, it gets a little bit purpley, blue. But there are times where I have my phone off. Maybe I'm drinking a cup of coffee and I'm just embracing the moment, and I feel just it feels so peaceful. And I feel like in those moments, I'm not speaking, but I'm with the heart. I'm with my heart at that time. And even I think even silence can be a form of communication. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Oh, absolutely. There's so much to silence. That's why meditation is so important. Prayer, because it takes us to that place of between thought. And if we could listen in that place between thought, we would hear so much more. It allows for messages and awarenesses to drop in instead of starting directly from our own intellect. Yes, silence is very important. And it can be used as a weapon, but it also can be used as a gift.
Now, for the next part of this interview, I wanted to ask you, you've been so busy, again, doing the social media and also taking time for yourself, going to the gym. You've talked about that. You've had your book, your TEDx talk. What's next for Dr. Heather Browne?
To really enjoy where I am. I'm 61, so a couple years away from retirement. But I've had a lot of people ask me, what's the next big project and what's the next book? And um, I put so many years into the TEDx and the book and the online program that I really just want to enjoy what I have created and where I am, versus come up with some other big next level. And I know people say, you continually need to be leveling up, but I think there's also a place to really enjoy what you have created and to refine it and to improve it and to learn from it versus just adding something else on. So for me, it's really just enjoying where I am, um, and learning what is next for me to grow from within this experience instead of making it some sort of task or project beyond me. Travel is an important component, definitely. My both of my kids are young adults, and so being a part of their adult life is really amazing and really beautiful and really important. Yeah.
And for those who are interested to learn more about communication with the heart, uh, of course, we have your book, Speaking with the Heart. Are there any other resources or books that you can recommend so that someone on this journey who is trying to learn more about this, that they can any resources that you can recommend to help them in this journey?
Sure. Some of my old-time favorites, Love by Leo Buscaglia. It's an excellent book. Love is Letting Go of Fear by Jem Polsky is a wonderful book. Um, Beyond Codependency by Beatty is an excellent book. Um, How We Love is a fascinating book. Attachment, Chapman's Love Languages. Yeah, there's so many. There's so many. And so I'm honored to be one of many really lovely books that can help in how to let yourself be you and share yourself and learn from others in this world. There's so many great books out there.
And I've asked you how you do your work, how you impact people's lives. Now I wanted to ask you, how has this work that you've done, you helping people break down the barriers and helping people to communicate, how has it changed your life?
Oh, I learn every day. And I'll share that with people I'm with. I'm like, oh my gosh, you just helped me have a new thought. Thank you so much. I learn every day because there's always a little bit of a different way to experience it, a different way to share it. I remember when I was working on my book and I was speaking with a client, she was really triggered, and I had a new awareness of triggers in our session and thought about it a lot. And I went back to her and I said, could I share that in my book? And she said, I'm going to be in your book. I'm like, if you let me. She said, yeah. So that is the beauty of working with clients, is that you learn so much more than what you have known. Um, and so every single person I have worked with has impacted me on some level. And I'm incredibly grateful for people trusting me with their heart, with their story, with their message, with their now, and in the hopes of who they will choose then to let themselves be. I'm very, very honored by that.
And now I come to my closing question, and that is, what is your truth that heals?
Mm. That we are all made of love, for love, through love, by love, for the purpose of cultivating love. And anything that's going on in the world that is of discord, anger, frustration, hurt, fear, sadness simply needs more love. And love cannot necessarily take away what's going on, but it always softens it and it always holds it. And so my call is, how much can I bring love into any situation or into any relationship as much as possible? And especially when it's not being presented to me. How can I recognize, oh, you're really mad, you're really sad, you're really angry, you're really defensive. You must not be feeling love right now. And so, what can I do to try to help with that so that we can move into a place where you will feel that with me and then hopefully change the dynamic between the two of us going forward?
Thank you so much, Dr. Heather Browne. And where can people find more information about you?
My website's the easiest, so it's just www.drheatherbrowne.com, drheatherbrowne.com. And if you go on there, there's a whole page of freebies, so feel free to grab them. My book is there, the TEDx is there, as you said, the blog and the podcast and the news shows. So I'd be honored to have people reach out if they have questions or they just have a response to what we said tonight if they don't put it in your notes.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Heather Browne. And to those in the audience, thank you for tuning in to this episode of the Truth That Heals podcast. If you have not yet subscribed, please go ahead and press that subscribe button, like and share so that others can learn more about speaking with the heart. Again, thank you all. And thank you, Dr. Browne, for being here.
Thank you.